Because EA stopped caring about Criterion, the Burnout developers. That's it, there's the answer. That's all you wanted to know. I wish you good luck travelling the rest of the interwebs, but for those who'd like to know more, please sit tight, because I promise there's a good story behind this. First of all, random question. Have you ever heard of Canon, the camera company? Well, you see, in 1993, they founded a new subsidiary, specifically for 3D work and research. Now, why am I telling you this? Well, because that subsidiary just so happens to be Criterion Software Limited. Criterion Software Limited was actually very good at this whole 3D thing. So good, in fact, they ended up developing their own tool for creating 3D graphics in video games, which they called Renderware. Now, a lot of you will recognize that name, but for those who don't, allow me to enlighten you. Renderware is the game engine behind basically every significant game released between the year 2000 and 2005. Specifically Renderware version 3. Tony Hawk's Pro Skater, the GTA trilogy, SpongeBob, all made in Renderware 3. But before all of that, Criterion Software Limited needed a way to show off what their wonderful tool was capable of. And for that, they created a division called Criterion Games in 1999. Their first Renderware game was a skateboarding game no one cares about anymore, but after that, they created Burnout. Now, I don't think I have to give you a sales pitch for these games. You're probably already familiar with them if you decided to watch this video, but I digress. The point is, Burnout worked. People love the wacky, unrealistic take on the traditional racing game, and as a technical showcase, Burnout showed what Renderware could do with, you know. And of course, this success meant a sequel, with honestly not a lot changed. But both of these titles were published by a company called Acclaim, and well, you see, they just sort of died. That made it so that they ended up selling off all their properties. But then who would publish the next Burnout game? Boy, do I ever hate seeing this logo. So yeah, EA ended up publishing Burnout 3 Takedown, which as much as it pains me to say was probably a good move back then. Because to be quite frank, Acclaim sucked as a publisher. They couldn't even market Burnout properly in the US, the native territory. And EA had Need for Speed, and they were a lot more competent at being a publisher. But EA had been eyeing Criterion for a while because they wanted Renderware for themselves, and later in 2004 they struck a deal with Canon to purchase Criterion Games along with Renderware and the Burnout franchise. By now EA has a bit of a history of both buying studios only to shut them down or abandon them after a few years, as well as planning to fully switch game engines for that to not work out so well. But this was the first time they did this. Sorry to spoil the ending. You see, EA had great plans for Renderware specifically. They wanted it to be the core of their development process, with Renderware version 4 becoming their jack of all trades for the upcoming Xbox 360 and PlayStation 3. But after a while, EA lost interest in Renderware. Renderware 4 turned out to be a less than ideal game engine for the at the time next generation consoles. They would continue to license the engine to existing users, but for the most part, Renderware was dead. But Criterion was still going strong with 2 more Burnout games in 2005, a first-person shooter titled Black in 2006, and in 2008, Burnout Paradise. This game is home to me. I spent quite a few years of my life with an offline Xbox 360 and a small stack of games, and this was the best one of them, and so naturally I have more respect for this game's soundtrack than I do for the national anthem. But after that form of heaven on a disc, some Criterion employees jokingly asked if they could maybe develop a Need for Speed game, as that franchise had bounced around within EA's internal developers for a while. And thus they became the home of Need for Speed for a while, with Hot Pursuit and Most Wanted. And although they were financial successes, these ended up being some of the most polarizing in that entire series. Then EA decided they again needed a new home for that franchise, so they created Ghost Games, which from then on developed the Need for Speed games, leaving Criterion mostly out of work. They helped Ghost out with their first game, but after that, not much, with most people leaving Criterion for Ghost, leaving only 17 people behind. And from then on they remained in uncertainty, mainly becoming a support studio for other EA developers. Fate worse than death. They remastered Burnout Paradise and made yet another polarizing Need for Speed game, but that's all they've done in nearly 12 years, left to die, but not killed. That is why Burnout died. Thank you for your time.